The Atlantic City Expressway stretches like a dark ribbon through the New Jersey landscape, a four-lane conduit connecting the glittering fantasy world of casinos and boardwalks to the mundane reality of everyday life beyond its toll plazas and interchanges. For most travelers, this highway represents nothing more than a practical route to vacation pleasures or a quick return home, but for investigators and families of the victims of one of New Jersey's most perplexing unsolved crime series, this road holds far darker significance as the dumping ground for a predator who preyed upon vulnerable women and vanished into the night without leaving behind any discernible trace of his identity. The case, now known as that of the Eastbound Strangler, began to unfold in November 2006 when workers performing routine maintenance along the expressway made a grim discovery that would ultimately reveal a pattern of violence stretching back several years and targeting women who existed on the margins of Atlantic City's glittering facade. In a drainage ditch not far from the westbound lanes, partially concealed by brush and standing water, lay the body of a woman who had been strangled to death and discarded like refuse, her positioning suggesting she had been placed there rather than dumped haphazardly, indicating a killer with at least some concern about concealing his crimes, despite the relatively public nature of the location. This initial discovery might have been recorded as another tragic but isolated incident in a city known for its darker undercurrents, were it not for the similar findings that followed over the next several months, each new victim sharing haunting similarities in background, method of death, and disposal location that gradually revealed to investigators the terrifying reality that a serial predator was using the highway as his personal hunting ground and burial site. The second victim was found in December of the same year, also strangled and also left in a watery ditch along the expressway, this time closer to the eastbound lanes, and in a location that suggested the killer was growing increasingly comfortable with his method of operation and his ability to avoid detection during the dangerous process of abandoning remains in relatively public spaces. The third and fourth victims followed in quick succession in early 2007, completing a pattern that now clearly indicated a single individual was responsible for all four deaths, each woman strangled and deposited in marshes, ditches, or other semi-concealed locations along the highway's eastbound stretches, their placement speaking to the killer's knowledge of the area's geography and his confidence in navigating these spaces under cover of darkness. The victims themselves, women with names, families, and stories beyond their tragic endings, shared similar backgrounds that made them vulnerable targets for a predator who understood the mechanics of exploitation and the grim reality that these women's disappearances might not prompt immediate concern from authorities or the broader public. Each woman had struggled with the complexities of life on society's margins, working in Atlantic City's adult entertainment industry that often operates in shadows and attracts those desperate for money or escape from difficult circumstances, making them perfect targets for a killer who recognized that their absence might not trigger the same urgent response as victims from more privileged backgrounds. This calculating selection process speaks to a predator who not only understood how to kill, but how to choose victims whose murders might attract minimal investigative resources, allowing him to operate with a chilling degree of impunity despite leaving multiple bodies in similar locations along a major transportation corridor. The first identified victim, known to her family and friends as a woman of resilience and compassion despite her personal struggles, had come to Atlantic City hoping for a fresh start but found herself caught in the same cycles that had plagued her elsewhere, her dreams ultimately ending in a drainage ditch alongside a highway that countless travelers passed daily without suspecting the horror concealed just beyond their view. The second victim, remembered by loved ones as someone who maintained her dignity and kindness even in difficult circumstances, had been trying to rebuild her life and reconnect with family when she crossed paths with the killer, her potential forever unrealized due to the cruelty of a predator who saw her as nothing more than an opportunity for violence. The third victim, described as fiercely independent yet deeply loyal to those she cared about, had overcome numerous challenges in her life only to meet her end at the hands of someone who exploited her vulnerability for his own dark purposes, leaving behind grieving family members who would never understand why she was targeted. The fourth and final confirmed victim, whose death brought the pattern into clear focus for investigators, was known for her artistic talents and her dreams of creating a better life for herself beyond the limitations of her current circumstances, aspirations that were brutally cut short by a killer who left her body in a location similar to the others, completing a geographic pattern that now stretched along multiple miles of the expressway. These women, though connected by their circumstances and their tragic fates, were individuals with unique personalities, hopes and relationships, facts often overshadowed by the sensational nature of their deaths, but crucial to understanding the full human cost of the killer's actions and the importance of remembering them as more than just case numbers or entries in a criminal investigation. Their families, who had already worried about their safety given the nature of their work, now found themselves confronting not only the pain of loss, but the additional anguish of knowing that the person responsible remained free, potentially living an ordinary life, while they grappled with unanswered questions and unresolved grief. Law enforcement agencies across multiple jurisdictions eventually connected these cases through painstaking forensic work and pattern recognition, forming a task force dedicated to identifying the individual responsible for what were clearly connected murders. But from the beginning, investigators faced significant challenges that would ultimately hinder their progress toward justice. The lack of physical evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, or surveillance footage from the relevant areas left detectives with little to work with beyond the grim patterns themselves, while the transient nature of the victims' lives and work made reconstructing their final days and movements an exercise in frustration and dead ends. Despite these obstacles, investigators pursued countless leads, interviewed potential witnesses, and employed emerging forensic techniques in the hope of finding the crucial break that would identify the killer. But each promising path seemed to dissolve into nothingness, leaving the case mired in speculation and frustration. The investigation received periodic boosts of attention when media outlets would revisit the story, or when amateur sleuths would propose new theories, but these bursts of interest inevitably faded without producing concrete results, allowing the case to slip back into the realm of cold case files and forgotten tragedies. Family members of the victims maintained their relentless advocacy, keeping pressure on law enforcement and reminding the public that these women deserved justice regardless of their backgrounds or professions. But as years turned into decades, the hope for resolution grew increasingly faint, despite their determined efforts. The emotional toll on these families has been immeasurable, compounded by the knowledge that the person responsible for their unimaginable loss remains free, potentially living an ordinary life just miles from where he discarded their loved ones like refuse alongside the highway. Various theories about the killer's identity have emerged over the years, ranging from the plausible to the sensational, with some investigators believing the Eastbound Strangler may have been a long-haul trucker familiar with the expressway, while others have suggested he could have been a local resident with particular knowledge of the marshy areas where the bodies were deposited. The possibility that the killer had some connection to law enforcement or security services has also been explored, given his apparent understanding of investigative techniques and his ability to avoid leaving behind evidence. But without concrete proof, these theories remain speculative exercises rather than actionable intelligence. What seems clear from the available evidence is that the Eastbound Strangler possessed a confident familiarity with the Atlantic City area and its transportation infrastructure, suggesting either a current or former resident who knew how to navigate the region while avoiding detection during his criminal activities. The case's most haunting aspect may be the killer's abrupt cessation of activity after his fourth known victim, leaving investigators to wonder whether he died, was imprisoned for unrelated offenses, moved to another region, or simply decided to stop killing, content in the knowledge that he had escaped justice for his crimes. This unexplained silence has created additional frustration for those seeking closure, as the lack of recent similar crimes provides no new evidence or patterns to analyze, effectively freezing the investigation in time without any apparent path forward, barring a confession or dramatic forensic breakthrough. The possibility that the Eastbound Strangler may have continued killing in other jurisdictions with different methodologies has been considered, but remains difficult to prove or disprove without coordinated review of unsolved cases across multiple states, a resource-intensive process that has yet to be undertaken in a comprehensive manner. Modern forensic science, particularly advances in DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, offers a glimmer of hope that evidence preserved from the crime scenes might yet yield identification if matched against contemporary databases or through innovative investigative techniques that were not available when the crimes were initially committed. However, the passage of time presents significant challenges to this approach, including the potential degradation of biological evidence and the loss of institutional knowledge as original investigators retire or move on to other cases, creating obstacles that must be overcome through dedicated effort and renewed commitment to solving these crimes. The persistence of victims' families and concerned citizens has been crucial in keeping the case alive in the public consciousness, their refusal to forget ensuring that these crimes remain an open priority, rather than fading into the archives of forgotten mysteries. The story of the Eastbound Strangler case serves as a sobering reminder of how predators often exploit societal vulnerabilities and institutional limitations to evade accountability for their actions, selecting victims they believe will attract minimal investigative attention and using their knowledge of geography to dispose of evidence in locations that minimize discovery risks. It underscores the importance of giving equal attention to crimes involving marginalized victims and of maintaining persistent investigative pressure on cold cases that might otherwise be forgotten amid competing priorities and limited resources. For the families of the victims, the passage of time has not diminished their need for answers nor their right to see justice served, and their continued advocacy stands as a powerful testament to the enduring bonds of love and the human capacity for hope even in the face of unimaginable loss. What are your thoughts on the Eastbound Strangler case? Why do you believe this predator was able to operate without being identified, and what might his knowledge of the Atlantic City Expressway suggest about his background or profession? Share your detailed theories and insights in the comments below. The archives of the Penance Files are always open for thoughtful discussion and collective investigation by our community of dedicated mystery enthusiasts. And if you believe that every victim of crime deserves justice, and that every mystery, no matter how complex or cold, deserves our persistent pursuit of truth and resolution, then please subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell to join us as we continue to seek answers, honor the forgotten, and explore the darkest chapters of criminal history in our relentless quest for understanding. Next on the Penance Files, the Chicago Strangler, a killer lost in the Windy City. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story from the archives.